Well, my name is George Whitten. I was born in Baltimore. I met my wife in the city of Brotherly Shove. That's Philadelphia. No, I got that. Okay. Anyway, that's where my wife and I have been married 17 years. We've been in Israel 17 years. And we got kind of redeployed here to the States in a very unusual circumstance. We're not sure when we're going back. We're hoping to go back somewhat soon. Every day I send out a news brief. It goes out to about 25,000 people a day. I cover what's happening around the world, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in the U.S., and what's happening to believers. We're all called to be watchmen, right? We're all called to blow the shofar. We're called to warn that the kingdom is coming, that we have a calling. One of the things I like to do is I actually try to keep people informed so that you actually are seeing the news before the news actually hits. Okay? Because if you actually understand that God is a cyclical, that everything is running in cycles, Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun, right? The earth goes around, right? The sun rises, the sun sets. That's a daily cycle, right? There's 7 days a week. We have a Shabbat once a week, and every Shabbat, that's a weekly cycle, right? We have between 30 and 31 days. That's a monthly cycle. We have, generally, in most places of the world, we have 4 seasons in the year, right? And we have a 12-month cycle for a yearly cycle. And then every 7 years, we have a Shemitah cycle. Every 7 Shemitah cycles, we have a Jubilee cycle, one cycle 50 years. When you start understanding that what starts at the beginning also ends, then you also start understanding that things happen in cyclical patterns so that we are better equipped to know how to pray. Okay? In Israel, right, there's a very specific date that's very... almost a date in Jewish history that is a bad omen for them. Okay? It's called Tish B'Av, the 9th of Av. Okay, now Tish B'Av, when the spies came back, Joshua and Caleb said, we can take the land, we can take it. But there was 10 spies that said, no, we can't take the land. There are giants in the land. And the Bible tells us that the earth opened up and swallowed them. Well, this day, the 9th of Av, they do not go into the promised land. It is on this specific day that after the first temple was built, Solomon's temple was built, it was destroyed on the 9th of Av, the anniversary of when the spies said, we can't take the land. Later, in 70 A.D., this is now the second temple, we have the same situation again, that Titus comes to Jerusalem, lays siege to Jerusalem, and the second temple was destroyed on the 9th of Av. So you have 2 temples destroyed in the 9th of Av and also the spies. Well, on this day then, throughout modern history, the Jews were expelled out of Spain in 1492. The Jews were expelled out of England. This is the beginning of the final solution for the Holocaust in 1941. This day is a very ominous day in Jewish history. This is why the Jewish people actually fast 3 weeks prior to this day, and then they really, take it serious this day, that nothing will happen this particular day. Well, we have the same thing in modern history, and we're actually entering into this week right now. Most people do not realize as we enter into this week from April 15th to April 21st, this is almost a prophetic type week, okay? In history, this is the birth of the Roman Empire, right? It was the birth of Napoleon, the birth of Adolf Hitler. In modern history, it's the birth dates of Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. It is in this particular time frame, we're also looking at, was the beginning of the Revolutionary War, the beginning of the Civil War. It was the time when we had the Spanish-American War, the Battle of San Jacinto, where we had the Lone Star Republic. This battle took place in this time frame. We ended the Vietnam War. This is all the events that are happening this week, the anniversaries of these events. In modern history, right, we had Waco, right, the Branch Davidian debacle in Waco. A few weeks later, a few years later, you had the Oklahoma City bombing on the anniversary of that event, right? The BP oil spill that happened a few years ago in the Gulf that caused the oil spill, that was also in this time frame. The Columbine shooting that took place. There are a lot of events that happen, okay? Now, as we're looking at events around the world, and you understand that past history tends to repeat itself, we start looking at the events around the world, and what do we see? Well, we see now that the Russians are massing troops in Ukraine, right? There's a lot of tension in Ukraine. We also see that inside the Middle East this past week, the Israelis will never confirm anything, but it's very well understood that they actually attacked an Iranian ship in the Red Sea. And the Iranians have threatened retaliation. So there's a lot of tension in the Middle East. But then we also have a court case happening in Minnesota. And this court case in Minnesota, who knows how that verdict will come out, but it may be the beginning of another time of craziness. But see, if you actually don't know what's happening, how can you effectively pray into what's happening? So what I try to do is I try to equip people to understand what has happened historically so that we can also understand what could very well be happening prophetically so that we can actually pray into these things. Because we're called the ministers of reconciliation, right? We're the ones that are called to pray in peace into this world. As we see these events taking place, how can we pray for Israel? How can we pray for the United States? How can we pray? And that's what I like to try to do. So if you would like to get our newsletter, it's free. It doesn't cost anything, okay? But these are the events you really need to watch out for this week. Well, God bless you. Thank you so much.